Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Chof, daf Yud Tes rather, daf Yud Tes in Baba Kama, Yud Tes. As we continue, as we learn for Achenoko Basis Rohan and Sun Matzar of Shibya, and we're continuing our discussion of Mu'ed, of Shor Mu'ed that does the damage done by Regel. As the beginning of the parak was case that are Regel till we get to the next Mishnah later today about Shane. Here we're talking about Regel. And Regel is chayiv, as we said, just like Shane, only in the Rishus HaNizik. And there's also a tolda of Regel called Sroros, a strange animal, to use the pun, a strange animal, that the animal does damage while it's walking, which is a characteristic of Regel, that it does it in its normal fashion. It's not intending to do anything, and he's allowed to walk that way in Rishus HaRabim. In Rishus HaRabim, he's not chayiv for Regel, whether it's Regel, regular Regel, or even Sroros, where it goes out by his power. In other words, it wasn't directly done by the animal's body, but rather by his power, like where the classic example is where pebbles shot out from under his feet as he crunched on them, as he stepped on them. There you chayiv chatzin nezek. But the question is, and we said that the chatzin nezek is not like the chatzin nezek of Karen, which is a knas, and is paid out of the goof of the animal, right? Paid out of the goof of the animal. With Sroros, chatzin nezek Sroros, we had that debate. Is that also paid out of the goof of the animal, or is it paid out of the general assets of the owner? So that question stood. We didn't really post it that shaila, but the chatzin nezek Sroros is mamon. It's not a knas. It's a lochel motion. We say it's mamon. Therefore, if you're moda, you're not potter. That's the difference there. And the difference also is that the chatzin nezek of Karen is chayiv both in Rishus HaRabim and Rishus HaYachid. Wherever you are, even in the Rishus HaNizik or Rishus HaRabim, it's considered unnatural. Meaning, Karen is not the normal thing for an animal to do. An animal doesn't usually gore, so it's mishuna. It's different. It's not usual. It's unusual. And there's a knas that you pay chatzin nezek. It's unusual, whereas Sroros is usual. So there's differences, even though the amount that you pay is half. But it could be by chatzin nezek of Karen, we know it's only paid out of the goof. From chatzin nezek of Sroros, we're not sure. It's not, the Gemara doesn't really post it that shaila, whether you pay out of the goof or out of the general assets. The general assumption is that you pay out of the general assets because it's a tolda of Regel, which pays out of the general assets, and the usual Regel pays out of Shom. This is chatzin nezek. That's halacha mosh we see in it, that it's mamon. But the question now is raised, several questions we're going to have today. Boy, Rav Ashi, the fourth line in Daf Yud Tes. Boy, Rav Ashi, yeshino it's Sroros. Sroros, which only pays half because chatzin nezek Sroros is halacha mashmi Sinai. What happens if you do it in an unnatural way? The natural way is you're walking along, the animal's walking along, and rocks shoot out, or something he didn't do it directly. Something that he did shot out. But the question is, if he does it with a shinoi, for example, let's say the animal kicked it on purpose. You didn't do it just walking along naturally. The animal kicked the rock, and then it shot out. Would you say there that that's mashuna, and therefore he should only pay half of what he normally pays? Normally pays half for Sroros, and he pays a quarter. Maybe there is such a thing.
It's on purpose. It should be a tolda
of Karen. Okay, so that's the question. That's the question. So not a tolda of Karen then. It should be a tolda of Karen, since he did it on purpose, right? So he kicked on purpose, but he didn't necessarily do damage on purpose. And when an animal gored the Karen, he had intention to do the damage. Here, he had intention to kick, but you think he's such a good shot that he could kick it through the uprights? I mean, you think he could do that? I don't think that he's that good. So Rav Ashi says, yeshin Sroros, if he kicks on it. For example, he says, according to the rabbis who say, not like Sumcha. Sumcha says that he doesn't hold the chatzin nezek Sroros. He says that Sroros pays the full amount. It's like regular. It's regular Regel, right? But over here, according to Rabbanan, that you pay only half chatzin nezek Sroros, that Sroros in the normal way pays half. Over here, let's say he kicked it with his foot. And because of that, when he kicked with his foot, maybe he was kicking in one direction. He was kicking, and then something shot out in the other direction. I don't think he shot it exactly right. He didn't intend necessarily to do damage. So Yeshon Sroros L'Rabia, that won't pay a quarter. Oh, ain't Yeshon Sroros L'Rabia Nezek? He has that question. So the Gemara says, why don't you do something to Rava? Yesterday we had this question of Rava. Rava raised the question yesterday. Yesh had Ada Litzoros. When Soros pays Chatzin Nezek, right? That's Loch Mashmi Sinai. Is that only the first three times? let's say it normally the way it walks after it constantly does that. Every time it walks, it shoots something out. Maybe the way his legs are made or whatever. Rabbi asked that question, is there, can you become a mu'id? In other words, do you go from 50% to 100% if he's done it more than 3 times? So Machlal Dein Shita is mashma that you can't have it both ways. The fact that you're asking that if you did it 3 times or more, 3 times or more than 3 times, would you have to pay the full amount? It's mashma that there is no quarter. Mashma that the regular time is 50% is the smallest amount. If you did it several times, maybe you'd have to pay the full amount. It's mashma. It doesn't hold this business that if you did it with a shinoi, it would be only a quarter. Gemara says, or Rav Ashi says, no. Rav Ashi raised a question about the quarter. Says, Dilma Rabba imtim slomakam. Rabba was asking this way, imtim slom ain shinoi. In other words, my question is there shinoi? Could you pay a quarter if you did it in a unnatural way, in an unusual way? Let's call it not unnatural, unusual way. If you say there's no discount for doing it unusually, ain shinoi. So yesha ada. If you hold there is no quarter, it doesn't go down. There is no shinoi. The minimum amount is 50%. So then the question is, if you did it more than 3 times, would you have to pay the full amount? Imtim salamer ain shinoi yesha ada. Is there ada you can become a mu'id and pay the full amount? Oh, ain't ada. Maybe that's his question. Take it. So the question stands. Rav Ashi's question stands. Right. Rabba's question it also stood. We didn't really have an answer to that. Right. Right. So we don't really know what the Gemara says. The boy Rabba, because the Shav boy Rabba. So the answer is Rabba was asking according to the Rabba was asking Kasha according to Rabbanan. But in Nachanami, if you hold like Sumkas, Sumkas holds that it's there is order because he holds that pay the full amount anyway. Okay. Right. So that was the question we raised. So here Rashi asked this question. I said, boy Rashi, another question he asked. Simchus holds that there is no chatzin nezik sroros. Sroros also pays the full amount. What about if it wasn't his indirect damage like sroros, but the indirectly of the indirectly? In other words, his power. What sroros means his power, not his direct goof, his power. What happens if it was the power of his power? For example, right? Is it like kocho, and you pay the full amount? Olo or not? Nigomer halacha. Does he learn there is halacha mashmi Sinai? In other words, we said that why is Sroros pay chatzin nezek only half amount? Why? Because it's halacha mashmi Sinai, and he doesn't hold on. Maybe he holds halacha mashmi Sinai, but it only applies it by the power of the power. In other words, you shot out a rock. The animal shot a rock. That's Sroros, and the rock went and broke something, and that went further and broke something else. That's the question. What do you have to? Oh, Dilma lo gomer halacha klal. He doesn't know the halacha mashmi Sinai at all. And there is no discount at all. Any damage done with the foot, if it's a Rishus HaNizek, you pay the full amount, and if it's a Rishus HaRabim, you pay nothing. So that question also stood. Now, the Mishnah said, our Mishnah about Regel said, let's say the animal was kicking. Now, if the animal was kicking on purpose with intention of doing damage, let's say we're kicking, meaning we're not talking about kicking the rocks. He kicked another animal. So that's Karen, right? That's unusual. Pays chatzin nezek. Oh, or pebbles shot out, flew out from under his leg. That's sroros. V'shavers skin brokel. Sham chatzin nezek. So now these are really 2 different cases. In both cases, it's chatzin nezek. But how are we learning it? Iboiler says the Gemara. Hechi kamar. How did the Mishnah mean? The damage with its kicking. It kicked something, and that's chatzin nezek because it's Karen. Oh, Sroros Kurchai, or Sroros in the normal way. He was just walking along. Misham Chatzin Ezek, Rabbana goes like Rabbanan, meaning the first one is Chatzin Ezek of Karen, the second one is Chatzin Ezek of Sroros, right? But the first one he had intention to damage, the second one was Sroros Kurchai, Rabbani. Oh, Dilma, Oisametas Vizika Babiyuta, it damaged with its kicking. Oh, Sroros Machmas Biyat. Oh, listen, he kicked, and that causes Sroros, Misham Chatzin Ezek. Pays chatzin nezek. Why? Because either way, when he kicked, that is a tolda of Karen, because he did something he had intention. He didn't do something usual. He did something unusual. That was the question. He did something unusual. Before we had the question also, is it unusual? And that's unusual also would be chatzin nezek. You're right. When you said before Soros Ravia Nizik, maybe you could say also that's also the bata b'regel machas biyutetiza. like Karen or not. So that's Odom Haisametas Bizika Biyuta, Otsroros Machmas Biyut, Misham Chatzinesik. Why? Because that's like Karen. That's a Karen Mishuna. Haki Urche, but if if the rock shot out the normal way, Misham Nezik Shalim, and maybe it goes like Sumchumari Sumchus. So who does our Mishnah go like? Even Sumchus holds that if you did something in an unusual way, that's Karen. So whether he kicked, and that would be unusual because he was trying to do, it wasn't usual for him to do that way. O Tsoros Kerchayu, or Tsoros also by kicking, Machmas Biyad, and therefore you pay Chatzi Nezek because the animal, let's say, had intention to do it, or at least it was unusual to do, and therefore you pay Chatzi Nezek. But if you did Tsoros normally, you pay the Nezek. Some goes like Sumpus, or so it doesn't go like the Rabbanon, go like Sumpus. Tashma, look at the Sefer. The Sefer, the Mishnah said, the same Mishnah says, let's say, trampled on a vessel and broke the Shabraso. And the broken shard fell on another cover Shavro. Al Rishim Sham Nezik Sham. First one pays like Sham, Achar Chatzinesik, young pays Chatzinesik. Sumchus Miasei Chatzinesik, but Sumchus doesn't hold Chatzinesik. The old Srorers always pays the full amount. Bechi Tema Rishon La Taza. When he says the first one was the first one La Taza, meaning that's Chatzinesik Srorers. Sheni La Taza. In other words, he broke something, and then it broke something, and it says V'shavro. Meaning the first one, not that he broke directly, but that he broke with Sroros, with Hataza, by flying it out. That's Nesik Shalim, because Simchus holds that Sroros pays Nesik Shalim. And in the second one, in other words, the first one that was hit by ricochet, let's call that, was Sroros. The second one was Sroros of Sroros, was Koach Kocho. And Simchus does hold there that there you only pay half. Maybe that's Pshat. B'Sheni tells us B'Shani let Simchus pay Kocho Kocho. Simchus makes the difference between Kocho, which pays full amount, and the Kocho, which pays half. If that's the case, so that proves the question that Rav Ashi asked before. Elohad the boy Rav Ashi Koch Kocho l'Simchus Kocho dami is like Kocho, you pay the full amount. Olak Kocho dami Tifshet leid Olak Kocho dami. If our mission is Simchus, it shows you that it's obvious. That shows you that Simchus holds that Koch Kocho only pays half, not like Srovos, which pays the full amount according to Simchus. And since Rav Ashi is not poshing the style from there, it's mashma that he doesn't hold the Mishnah goes like Simchus at all. And Taka Rav Ashi, Gemara goes on, holds that the Mishnah is like the Rabbanan, Mokila. And not only that, that's where he raised his question about the Revia. If it was kicking and it did damage by kicking directly, that's nezek. That's Karen. Oh, Sroros Kurchayu, that's Chatzinesik Sroros. That's a told of Regel. Hamachmas Biyut. But let's say that Sroros is because of the Biyut. Understand? Then he says if he kicks regularly, that's Chatzinesik Karen. If Sroros regularly is walking along and the thing shut out, that's Chatzinesik. Mashma Biyut Mach. Let's say that Sroros went away because of the beat of the kicking. He kicked, and therefore Sroros went out. That was a question Rav Ashi raised before. Maybe that would only be Rivi and this Shinui. Since he did it, yes, it was Rego. He kicked, right? He kicked. But since it was not normal for him to kick, it becomes like Karen, and he pays only half. It's really a hybrid. Why? Because he starts off by paying half because it's Sroros. Right? He didn't kick directly. He didn't kick the other animal directly. He kicked and rocks flew out. So the kicking is nezek. That's unusual. But the rocks flying out is Sroros. And Sroros regularly is half. So maybe over here, since he kicked it, the Sroros didn't go out in the normal way. It would be unusual to pay a quarter. In other words, when Rav Ashi asked the kasha that we mentioned, that we started off today by saying, Yeshin Sroros or be a nezek or not, it was based on this Mishnah. That's what Rashi says. Rashi says, Ach boy, the boy, right even where we are now, Ach boy, the boy Rav Ashi lael, Yeshin Tzoros or Ancient us, Ahomas Nisan boy, yes, on this Mishnah. He learns our Mishnah is like the Rabbana. Again, if the animal kicked, that's Chatzin Nezik Karen, no problem. If the animal walked along and the Tzoros fell out, that's also Chatzin Nezik Tzoros, Lachamosh Misinai. What happens if he kicked? He kicked, and then the Tzoros, from his kicking, he kicked Tzoros and they flew out. And would it go down to Ravi and Nezek Yeshini? Odelma, Oismatis Vizika Beyuta, Or maybe the mission means this: either he kicked and he kicked directly, and that caused the damage. That's chatzin Otzroros machmas miyat. When the mission is otzroros, that's also machmas miyat. That's chatzin because there's no difference between kicking and the tzroros going out, or just walking along and the tzroros going out. Either way, it's chatzin ezik. By shin and so shin, take that question and stand. Another question. We're in the second of the wide lines of the Gemara. Rav Abba bar Mamo miravami. Amila Rav Chia bar Abi asks from Haisim Melechas Makom she'ef shelo. What happens if he's walking in a place where it's full of pebbles? If you walk in a place which is all little pebbles, you crunch on it, things shoot out. Ef shelo Elam came into that. It's impossible to walk there without rocks shooting out. That's just the way it is when you walk on a thick patch of pebbles. Ooh, pardon? Like gravel. Yeah, like gravel, right. It's impossible to walk there without something shooting out. But what he did was he did kick it. But he did kick it and then it shot out. And it did damage. Now, keeping the Efshala Urchev, do you say that since it's impossible to walk there without shooting out anyway, they would have shot out? It's normal, and therefore it's Chatzinesik Sros. Odilma, Ashtami Machmasbiyat Kamatatsa. Here it's Mash but here the fact is that it went out because it was kicking. Take this, the question stands. But what's the nafkamina? So Rashi offers two pshatim, but the first pshat, his preferred pshat, Rashi is this: do you say that it would have gone out anyway? Go Dilma. Right now he kicked it, and if you say yeshi letzoros l'revia nezik, this would only pay a quarter. Another nafkamina would be if it's orche, then it's chatzin nezik troros, and it's mamon and moda b'mamon yachayim. Or do you say Hashtami Machmas Biyat Kamnatsi did it with a shinui, and therefore it would be like Karen, and it would be a knas, and if you moda knas is potter. But the way Rashi says in the first chart is that it's questions: would it be Rabbi and Nezik? And that's his question. The second chart also he says is it a tolda of Karen or is it a tolda of Rega? Another question that's raised. Let's say the animal is walking in Rosh Hashanah. Now Rosh Hashanah, you're only chayiv on Karen. You're not chayiv on Regel, because Regel, the damage is done in the normal way. Animals are allowed to walk in Rosh Hashanah, right? A lot of animals in Rosh Hashanah. Same thing with shame. It's normal for an animal to walk in Rosh Hashanah and eat something on the floor. Let's say he was walking in Rosh Hashanah, takes out the word about the tiza, and something shot out and did damage. Now, do you say Karen? Do you say it's like Karen? It's like Karen because it did damage. Right, he did damage in your chayiv because it shot out. He did damage. Dilma told the regel. So told regel potter. Told the regel. Regel's potter b'shus harabim. So what? That's the question. If he had the question, if he had the girsa, be it fine. So that he kicked. That's certainly like Karen. But Rashi doesn't seem to have that girsa, and Ram takes that also. He says cold source for chayiv told the regel potter. Or do you say that he teases b'shus harabim ki orchei v'alchot b'shus? So here the question is: if he's walking Rosh Hashanah and things shot out in Rosh Hashanah, if he did normally Rosh Hashanah chayiv on Karen, Karen is he intended to do damage. Fine. First 3 times chatzin nezek. Afterwards he's a mood, he pays a full amount. But here he's walking Rosh Hashanah and things shot out. Is it like Karen or is it like Regel? On Malay Mustafa told the Regel. It's a told the Regel. He's walking out. He didn't kick or intend to do damage. He was just walking along. So if anything shot out, it's no different if an animal stepped on a glass and broke it, or if he stepped on a rock and it shot out, it ricocheted out from under his foot. Ricochet is not the right word, but it's the best word I can think of. It just shot out, it flew out. Mustafa told the Regelu, and it's told Regelu, he's potter. Okay. So that's what he answered me. He says he's potter in a case like that. If said you're potter, because that's Regel. Regel B'Shus Ram is potter. He's a B'Shus Ram. He's like, what happens if he shot out something Rosh Hashanah and it went into Rosh Hashanah and it did damage there? Now Rosh Hashanah is chayav. Mao Amalei Akira and Kan and Kan. If there's no uprooting or no lifting, in other words, there was no removal. This is the term that's borrowed from Shabbos, right? In Shabbos, in order to be chayav from Rosh Hashanah or vice versa, or Dal Rosh Hashanah, there has to be Akira and Anoch. You have to removal and a putting down. If you just picked up something, like, they say that if you're walking in a place where there's no Erev, and all of a sudden you reach on Shabbos, you reach in your pocket and you found a handkerchief, and you walked out with it. Now, when you chayiv, when you put it down, so look for a makom p'tur, like a fire hydrant or something like that, a small thing that's under 10 tefachim high, and put it down there so there's no real hanacha. There's no hanacha in Rosh Hashanah. In other words, you're not chayiv. So he borrows that term here. He says, well, if there's no akira, you're not chayiv in Rishus Harabim for regel, even for a told of regel like Sroros. So if you didn't pick it up, it can't be any putting down, right? If there's no lifting up, there could be no putting down. In other words, if there's no Rishus Harabim, how can it be Rishus Yachid? That's what Rav Meir initially said. Esvei, what do you mean that you're not chayiv in Rishus Harabim? Esvei, ha'isam alach b'derech. Yeah, I'm talking about bitisa and shout out bein Rishus Yachid Rishus Harabim chayiv. My law, bitisa Rishus Harabim, vizik Rishus Harabim. It's mashma that you're chayiv even Rishus Harabim, regel, that it's not a told of regel, but rather it's like Karen, since it did it in Rishus Harabim. It says, look, it is Rishus Harabim, it is Rishus Yachid. If an animal did damage with his foot in Rishus Harabim, he's totally potter. Here, it shot out under his foot in Rishus Harabim, but it went into Rishus Yachid. You just told me, Rav Meir, you yourself said Akira and Kan Anocha Yesh Kan. If there's no removal, how could there be a placing down? I'm like, how do you be? I retract about that. I hold Enochem. Regel's not chayiv in Rishus Harabim if he does damage in Rishus Harabim. But if the thing shot out and went into Rishus Yachid, I agree that you're chayiv there. Eisvei, another kash on this. Darsa ala kli, our Mishnah. Darsa ala kli, if the animal stepped on a kli, v'shavas broke it, v'nafal hashavra ala kli acher, and the shard, the broken piece went and broke something of a shavar and broke the second item. Ala rishon misham nesek shalom. On the first one, you chayiv nesek shalom. That's direct damage. Ala achar misham chatzi nesek. All right. The Tanya lamed or more ambitious on nizik. That's Rishus Nizik, where you're only chayiv. Regels on Rishus Nizik. Al B'Rishus Harabim, Al Rishon P'tura. On the first one, you're potter, because if an animal broke something by stepping on Rishus Harabim, it's potter there. Al Achron chayiv. On the second one, you're chayiv. Now you're chayiv for the tzroros. You're potter on the Rishon, but on the second one, you're chayiv. My law, V'Tisa B'Rishus Harabim, V'Zik B'Rishus Harabim. Talking about where the direct damage you did. The animal stepped on the glass and broke it. You're potter. Regels potter Rishus Harabim. But if he stepped on a rock and it flew out and damaged Rishus Harabim, mashma that you're chayiv, because he says on the second one you're chayiv. He says low. Low. It is Rishus Harabim is Rishus Yachid. That's your chayiv. I've omer akira and kan and nocha yesh kan. So there's no akira. If you're not chayiv for the removal of the pebble that shot out in Rishus Harabim, how could you have a hanocha in Rishus Yachid? Amalei, same thing. I retract from that. In other words, Rav Meir is maintaining that any damage done by a regel in Rishus Harabim is potter, whether it's regular or whether it's sroros. Whereas if you did damage in Rishus Yachid from Rishus Harabim, you're chayiv. Aini, is that the case from Rabbi Yochanan on the base? Ein chatzi nezek choluk. There's no difference in chatzi nezek. Presume we're talking about sroros. Low Rishus Yachid, low Rishus Harabim. There's no difference. Rishus Yachid, Rishus Harabim. You're chayiv in Rishus Yachid, you're chayiv in Rishus Harabim. My love, Itisa Rishus Harabim, Vizika Rishus Harabim. Doesn't that mean that just like if you do damage by regel in of chatzi nezek of sroros in Rishus Yachid, you're chayiv in Rishus Harabim also for the same? Low. Itisa Rishus Harabim, Vizika Rishus Yachid. That's what we're talking about. There's no difference whether the sroros was done all in Rishus Yachid or whether it went from Rishus Harabim into Rishus Yachid. Either way, you're chayiv there. I've omer akira and kan anocha yesh kan. If there's no chiyuv in Rishus Harabim for the removal, how can be a chiyuv for the placement in Rishus Yachid? I'm allowed the same answer. I retract from that. I hold that if the damage was done in Rishus Yachid, even if it started in Rishus Harabim, you're still chayiv. Chayiv chatzi nezek sroros. Because we want to grow up on Ebois and I'll tell you no. When Rabbi Yochanan said there's no the chatzi nezek, there's no difference between Rishus Harabim and Rishus Yachid. Keep coming Rabbi Yochanan, the very pasha. I Karen. He said my Karen. There's damage done by an animal intending to do damage, like goring. The animal intended to gore another animal makes a difference in Rishus Harabim or Rishus Yachid. You're chayiv in Rishus Harabim. You're certainly chayiv in Rishus Yachid. I'm chayiv in Rishus Harabim. I'm certainly chayiv by going to somebody else's property and do the damage there. But even in Rishus Harabim, you're chayiv there because a normal animal who's allowed to walk in Rishus Harabim, he's allowed to do damage by stepping on something or by eating something. That's normal. You can't hold him responsible for that. But for goring, that you have to hold him responsible for. And therefore, the first 3 times, remember, you're not really responsible. Torah gave you a knas. But afterwards, you're chayiv. So that's when he says there's no difference on chatzi nezek between Rishus Harabim and Rishus Yachid. He's talking about the chatzi nezek of Karen. We're not talking about the chatzi nezek of sroros. Yes, Rav Yehuda and the Sea of Rav Oshia. These 2 rabbis were sitting on Kila de Rav Yehuda at the entrance of Rav Yehuda's house. Nothing else now. A question was raised among them. Kishkisha or Kishkisha bizan b'mal. What happens if the animal was wagging its tail and did damage that way? We learned that what's regel? You step on something, right? That's the off. What's the tolda? Tolda is he did damage with his body walking. There was a package on his back and that broke something, or there was a bell hanging from his neck or the bit in his mouth or whatever. Any part of the animal did damage, but the animal didn't step on it. He just did damage with his body. That's what told him. What about if the animal did damage with his tail? He wagged his tail. What do you say to him? Amalei, idach. So that one of these rabbis asked this question. The other one answered him, what do you expect? How is the owner supposed to walk with this animal? He's leading the animal. The animal stepped on a glass, fine, that's regal. The animal broke something with its fat body or the saddle on its back. Okay, that's also a tolda of regal. What are you supposed to do with the tail? Is the owner supposed to walk holding the tail? Nobody does that, right? That's not normal. So he can't stop from that. That's normal. If he broke it with his tail, that's also regal. Animals walk, they got feet, they got packages, they got saddles, they got bits, they got bells, they got stuff on their back, and they also got a tail. You can't expect any different, therefore that's a told of regal. Karen Nami Nema. So by Karen also, what you say, what he's not supposed to hold the tail, so that's normal. By Karen also name him. Why are you chayiv if your animal damages by goring with its horn? What are you supposed to do? Walk along holding the horn to protect protect every other animal or every other package from being damaged? You're supposed to hold on to it. I can compare. Karen, it's not normal for the animal to do damage with its horn. It walks along. It doesn't normally do damage with its horn unless he intended to. But this is normal for an animal to wag its tail. That's what they do. So if that's normal, if the animal wags its tail, what was your question? Just like the animal walks along with a saddle and a bell and a bit and packages on its back, it has a tail too. The question was where there was excessive wagging. The animal did more than necessary. Some dogs walk along and they just wag a little bit, and some do a lot. There was excessive. The question is, you can't stop that. That's normal for an animal. You can't differentiate between excessive and non-excessive. By Ravina, this question: let's say the animal was a male and had an erection, and kishkishav amsa, and it wagged with its membrum, with its penis, right? What do you say there, Mao? Do you say midi davia Karen? All questions are raised in the Gemara. We don't avoid sensitive topics. Midi dahave a Karen, just like Karen. Maybe it's like Karen. Karen lav yisr katakavla. Why did the animal do damage with its horn? Because it got a passion, it got angry, right? And wanted to do damage. Hachanami loshon. This is also the animal was aroused, right? So maybe this is like Karen also, and she'd have to pay chatzi nezik the first 3 times. Oh, Dilma, Karen kavas lahazik. Karen had intention to damage. Oh, and kavas lahazik. Here, the animal's not intending to do damage. It couldn't avoid it. It had an erection. It saw a female. It had an erection.
Blame the cow. Go ahead.
Go blame the cow. Right. And here's exactly the question. Here's the question: is that on the side that it's like Karen, so the owner would have to take precautions after 3 times if this happened constantly. You understand? And that's the question. The question is it like Karen, and therefore or not, or is it simply like Regel? Is it like Karen because Karen its passion was aroused and got angry? This is also its passion was aroused, therefore it's like Karen. Or do you say no? Karen has kavanah to do this, has no kavanah to do damage, and therefore this is normal for an animal, and it's like wagging its tail, and therefore it's Regel. Question stands. Now look at the Mishnah. If you just look back at the Mishnah on Yezayim and Manal, just remember we talked there about Tetzan and Mu'ah. How is an animal a Mu'ah? So we talked about a regular animal, behemoth. If he steps on things, breaks on things. What about a Tarnagol? They walk along, they jump around, and they break things. Now the Mishnah said, what happens if there was a string or a ribbon attached to its foot, right? Or it was hopping along and it broke Caleb? That's considered Misham Chatzidez. That's Sroros. Rashi says that the string is like Sroros. It didn't do directly damage with its foot. It was just hopping along, right? Nashmor, the idea, it damaged the foot. It was hopping along. Why is it Sroros? Because the animals will see, as Gemara is going to come out. Why is that Sroros? Why isn't that direct? He did it with his foot, right? So the string was attached, but the answer is he threw it. The animal threw it. He threw something, and he broke the kelim. Moshe Mahadis, and it threw something and broke the kelim. That's Chatzines against Sroros. So now the Gemara asks this question: what's this case? Amar Rav Huna. We're assuming now that Rav Huna is going on the Mishnah. Lo shanu ela shenik shemeila. That's only if the ribbon or the string got it, let's call it a ribbon, got attached to its foot by itself. Listen carefully. Aval kosher adam, but if a person, let's say the owner attached the ribbon to the foot, maybe he attached the ribbon in a different color, like you identify your luggage. So maybe he wanted that a colorful ribbon to identify it, and then the animal went out and did damage. Kosher adam chayev, chayev. So the Gemara says, what's the case over here? Nikshem elav. If you say if it was only ribbon got attached by itself, then it's true. Nikshem man chayev, who's chayev? The owner let his chicken went out, right, in somebody else's property. Now somehow a ribbon got attached to the foot. So why to the foot of the chicken, and the chicken did damage with that ribbon. So why is the owner responsible? He didn't do it. Says then he's chayiv chatzin ezek, like the Mishnah said. But kosher adam, then you're chayiv entirely. So nikshem elav man chayiv who you chayiv. Elam the owner of the ribbon. Who's going to be chayiv here? There was a ribbon laying on the street there somewhere, or on the guy's property. You say the owner of the ribbon? Why is he responsible? Either if he had put away the ribbon properly, locked it away, or was under his own rishus. Anasu, it was an accident. He didn't do it. If he didn't posheyu, you left it around a ribbon that caused damage. He's posheya. Rashi explains it's like bor. Because you left an obstacle in Rishus Rabbim, it bores chayv even Rishus Rabbim. So idatzne onasu, idaloatzne, he's poshe, he's negligent. Elachai baltar, maybe the baltarnagol is chayv. Now, where does that go? The guy sent out his chicken. He didn't know that there's a ribbon in the street that the chicken's going to get to. Maishna kuli nezik. Why shouldn't he have to pay? So why doesn't he say pay chatzin nezik? Why? If a man opens up a bore, now so all of a sudden we're going now that this is bore, right? We're assuming now that this animal did damage what with the ribbon, right? So who did the ribbon belong to? If the ribbon belonged to somebody and he didn't care for it, he attached it directly, right? So why do you say if it got attached by itself, he pays chatzi? I understand. If he hid the ribbon, he's totally potter. If he didn't, he's poshay, should be chayav for bor, because he left the bor b'shus harabim, that it would be easy for an animal to get attached to it and cause damage. Elachai bal tarnagol. Why? Why shouldn't he have to pay the whole thing? You say chatzin ezeki if tachish bor below shore bor. If a shore opens up a bor, you can't say that the owner's chayav for that. If a man opened a bor, so chatzin ezek nami ish bor below shore bor. Why you pay chatzin ezek? Ella maslisin about the idea. Our mission is speaking about that the tarnagol threw the ribbon or the string. The tarnagol picked the string up with his foot or with his beak or whatever, and he threw it. That's shroros. And that's why it's chatzin ezek shroros. Rashi explains. Loma took even if a person attached the string to the animal, no he didn't. If a person would have made a bore, and we say that's if a person dies in a bore, you're not chayiv for that because it wasn't a person should have guarded himself. But if he tripped on it, he would be chayiv for his nesek. So, but that's only if he got hurt because of that. But over here, he didn't get hit because of that. A person, let's say the owner attached the ribbon to it, the chicken took the ribbon and he threw it and broke something with it, string, whatever. He broke something with it. So in that case, that's chatzin ezek. Why? Because that's shroros. It's a chatzin ezek shroros because he did something. It's in his way, but it's he had the thing. He had the ribbon with him, the string, and there's normal things. He threw it. Went out, or as he was walking along, Zorak Atanagal Aglil B'Shibur. Not saying he did it intentionally. He did intentionally want to be like chatzin ezek of Karen, but the animal was walking along and it just flew out from him. And he was walking on, he threw it, whether intentionally or not intentionally, that's shroros. So where did Rav Huna say, Lo shana nikshim e'elav al kosher adam mechayev? Different case entirely. Rav Huna ba'almed, in general, itmar. V'lil hefker, let's say you have a ribbon of hefker in Rishus Harabim or a string. Rav Huna, nikshim e'elav, potter. If it got attached to an animal by itself, so you're potter, the owner's potter, right? Nikshim e'elav b'tarnago, b'nisko ba'adam. Let's say it got attached to the foot of a chicken, and then a person tripped on it. Then you're potter. Why? Because in Nisko ba'adam potter, who are you going to chayev? The man chayev, the leo lesle ba'al, it has no owner. It's just a ribbon and it's just Rabbit's hefker. That man didn't make the owner of the Tarnagol didn't. Tarnagol goes out in the Shus Rabbin, and some think of a piece of tape or something got attached to him and got attached to his foot. The tape is hefker, and then somebody tripped on it. Who are you going to be chayiv? The owner of the Tarnagol. It's not his fault, and the tape or the string has no owner. So then you're putter. Because if a person attached, if he attached a rope or tape or something to the animal and then that caused damage, because then I'm chayiv. The question was, bor is non-stationary. Here it's walking around. The answer is, we learned before in the first parak that a bor that's rolling around, the owner is also chayiv. And here he made the bor. So that's not a case of Rafun is not talking about a case of tsuros. Our mission is talking about a case of tsuros. What's the case of tsuros? Where an animal got attached, even if the owner attached a ring or a string to the chicken, but the chicken went and he took the string, and when he went with it, he threw it. He threw it. In his normal course of like walking on like tsuros, he threw the string. That's tsuros, and you pay chatzinezek. It's a tolda of regel. Case of a shame muedas. How was a shame? But the tooth, meaning by eating. How was he mued? Lechas aroyla. So we learned in the beginning of the parak that this is going on chaya. Remember, Kate Hashem was he eats only something that's roy, something that's fit for the animal to eat. But as we'll see, if he eats clothing, that's not shame. That would already be Karen, unusual, and you pay chatzinezek the first 3 times. A behema. What about a behema? Not a domesticated animal. Then what else? So we said the first part's going about chaya. The idea is the same, or it's a chaya or a behema. What else? Let's say an animal ate clothing or kelim, because that's already a tolda of Karen. Medvar more ambitious and nizik. When are you chayiv? When is a shame chayiv on just a rabban potter? But let's say he ate something of yours from Shus Rabban. He had a gnaw. Now you didn't have to feed your animal lunch because he ate your food. So he's not chayiv for damage. Let's say you had expensive fruit and he ate expensive fruit. He'd only get paid like cheap animal feed. That's all you'd have to pay. That's all you have to pay is because he did. The owner of the fruit did save this guy from feeding the animal lunch. So you pay what you normally pay for your animal's lunch. And then it's mishamis mashanis have a pesa. Here's mashanis. Let's say in the middle of the street, right from the Shus Rabbim. Mishamis mashanis. He only has to pay for the hanoah. The owner of the animal who ate it doesn't have to feed him lunch. So pay the owner of the fruits what you would have paid for your animal's lunch. Let's say from the sides of the street, where that's like Rosh Hashanah. There, it's not normal for an animal to go there. An animal's only has permission to walk on Rosh Hashanah, not on the sides. The sides, like the stalls where they do business, that's already like a private area. Then you have to pay. That's like Rosh Hashanah. If the animal ate from the front of the store, people all today's stores put all their wares out in the middle of the street. So then that's mishlamis mashanis. Then the owner of the animal is not responsible because the owner of the store left his stuff out in the street. You only have to pay the hanoah. You have to pay what lunch would have cost you. We ate the middle of from the store. If he went inside the store, he put his head inside the store. Then mishlamis mashazik. That's shame b'shusan nizik. Tanur rabbanan. Hashem knows lechol is a roilah. Case of hey mishnech is a chatzar nizik. And more than a chatzar nizik. Ba'achla ochlan we ate food which is normal for the animal to eat. B'shasa mashkan or roilah. Misham nizik sham pesach oman. Chen chaya shenechzol chatzar nizik. V'tarfa behema and tore up on an animal. Ba'achla basar. Misham nizik shalim. What about where animals ate something that they're not usually eat, but they could eat? Para she'achlas a para who ate barley doesn't normally eat that, or chamor she'achal kashinan, or a donkey that ate beans doesn't normally eat that, or kelev shlikas Hashem kelev licked up the oil. V'chazer she'achal chatif she'basar chazer ate basar. These are not normal. Sham nezik shalim. Even though that's not normally what they eat, but they do eat it when they're really hungry and there's nothing else. Something which is not normal from the eat. But he ate when he was pressed, when there was nothing else to eat. That's considered eating, and then Yuchayv Chatzinezek, Nezek Sholing for shame b'shus hanizik. I shouldn't. Let's say a cat. Let's say a cat doesn't normally eat dates, but he ate dates because there was nothing else. Or a chamra d'achal binsa, or a donkey that ate fish, doesn't usually eat that. Misham Nezek Sholing. We had this chamra. I mentioned the chamra yesterday. what was chamra? Chamra could be wine, could be donkey. If it ate fish, it's a donkey. It's not wine, right? Okay. Ahu chamra. There was a donkey. The achol nama ate bread. Doesn't normally eat bread. Well, posil salad, and he ate, not only ate the bread, but he broke or chewed up the basket that the bread was in. So Chayva Rav Yehuda was in Babel, but he was Machayiv and L'shalom Nezek Shalom, and he told me eat Nezek Shalom for the bread, which is a total damage, even though he doesn't normally eat bread, but he ate bread here. But on the basket, which is not normal for him to eat, he chewed it up or he broke it in half. He pays Chatzi Nezek. So more by Mike, even though since it's normal for him to eat bread, or if he's eating the bread, he eats the whole thing with the crust and with the outside, and he's only to eat the basket too. So he should have paid the whole amount. Rashi explains that even though he's in Bavel, and the Chatzi Nezek is what? Chatzi Nezek is a knas, right? And since it's Mishuna, why you can't collect knas in Bavel? Speaking where the Nizik grabbed the money. He grabbed the money and therefore that was allowed. But he's not allowed to pass that because he's in Bavel. In any case, though, but isn't it normal for me to eat the bread with the basket? Says the Acha Bahadar Paulus. Here's what happened. He first ate the bread. When he finished the bread, then he chewed up the basket. So that was already not normal for him to do that. For the basket, you pay Chatzi Nezek. Says more pas urchil. But is it normal for you said it's normal for him to eat bread? Is it normal for a donkey to eat bread? If he ate bread or meat or a cooked dish, you pay Chatzi Nezek, because it's not normal for him to eat Nezek Shalom. My love, and only speaking about a behemelo. We're talking about a chaya. They're speaking about a chaya. A chaya, it's not normal to do. For a chaya, it's not normal to eat those things, and therefore he pays Chatzi Nezek. But for a donkey, it is normal to eat those things, and therefore he pays Nezek Shalom for the bread. Lo b'chaya. Chaya basar orche. But even for a chaya, is it normal for a chaya to eat basar? Says the mitzvah. Either it was roasted, by sema the tapia, or we're talking about a kind of a chaya, a deer, and a deer does eat meat. By sema alone, but they more by bema ubaptura. What happened was here. What was unusual because the animal ate it at the table. The animal sat down at the table, put a little napkin under his neck, and he sat down and had a meal. That's unusual, and that's why he was chayav to eat there. I will pick him here tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, from the top of Daf, continuing this discussion.